Hello and welcome to Linux Saints YouTube channel. This video is going to be a programming exercise, and in this video we are going to check whether a number is an Armstrong number or not. So if you do not have an idea what an Armstrong number is, then I'm going to explain that to you first. Well, an Armstrong number is a number which is known to be a very narcissist number because when each of its digit is raised to the power of total digits in that number, the result is the number itself. For example, we have the number 153. We see that there are 3 digits inside this number 1, 5 and 3. If we do a simple mathematical operation of raising each of its digits to the power of 3, then the result, that is 1 to the power of 3 multiplied by 5 to the power of 3 and then 3 to the power of 3 is actually 153, which is the number itself. So that is the definition of Armstrong numbers. Let's go to our code and let's try to write the code to find whether a number is an Armstrong number or not. So the very first thing that we are going to do is that we are going to include the required libraries. So simply type in include and then the library which is stdio.h, and then I want another library which is math.h because I want to use the function power. And then we are going to create the main function, and inside the main function we are going to create some integer variable. The very first variable would be where we are going to store our number taken from the user. And then we are going to create another variable where we are going to store that number, but this time around we would be making some modifications to this number. So I'm going to call it temporary number. And then I'm going to create another variable, I'm going to call it remainder. And lastly, I want another variable, I'm going to call it n, and I'm going to set it equal to 0. And then we want to take the input from the user. So I'm going to prompt the user using the printf function, and I'm going to say something like enter a valid number. And I'm going to store that number using the scanf function inside a variable num. Then we are going to pass this number to our temporary number variable. We have done the basics. Now let's get to the part where we are actually going to compute whether this number is an Armstrong number or not. So the very first thing is that we need to find the total number of digits within this number. So for that I'm going to use a simple for loop, and I'm going to say like temp number is equals to my original number, and I'm going to run this loop until my temporary number becomes 0. And for every iteration, I'm going to increase the value of my n variable. So how do I find the total number of digits? Basically, I want to divide my temporary number by 10 and store it inside that new temporary number. So temp num / is equals to 10. Let me just add a comment. This statement is equal to n is equals to n divided by 10. So this should give us the total number of digits in a number in the variable n. Now I'm going to get each individual digit and raise it to the power of n, which is the total number of digits in our number. So I'm going to use another for loop, and I'm going to say that temporary number is equals to my original number, and again I'm going to run this loop until my temporary number becomes 0, and for every iteration I want to get the remainder or the last digit of my number. I want to store the result of the remainder raised to the power of n in some variable. So for that I'm going to create a variable over here of float data type, and I'm going to call it result, and I'm going to set it equal to 0.0. Coming back to our for loop, I'm going to say like result is plus equal to, and then I'm going to use a function which is power, and inside here I'm going to pass in my remainder, and I'm going to raise it to the power of n. And then coming out of the for loop, I'm going to check whether the result is equal to my original number. So for that I'm going to use an if statement, and I'm going to manually typecast the result variable and set it equal to my original number. And if that is the case, then I'm going to use a printf function to prompt the user that the number that the user inputted was an Armstrong number. Otherwise, I'm going to print that this was not an Armstrong number. So now I'm going to run this code, and for the first time I'm going to type in a non-Armstrong number, let's say 36, and hit enter. So it prints out that this was not an Armstrong number. So I'm going to run this code again, and this time around I'm going to actually type in an Armstrong number which is 1, 5 and 3 and hit enter, and it prints out that the number 153 is an Armstrong number. So that is how you deal with this particular problem.